Okay, so get this. Today we are going to be diving deep into the world of landfill
Oh,
supervisors.
yeah.
And I know what you're thinking. That doesn't sound super interesting, right?
Right.
But stick with me on this one because
Yeah.
honestly, when I was looking into this for this deep dive, going through some of the career guides over at RoleCatcher, I was really surprised by how complex this whole world is.
Yeah, it's kind of a hidden side of waste management that I think a lot of people don't really think about.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot involved. We're talking about constantly changing rules and regulations,
Mm-hmm.
really complicated environmental systems that have to be managed. And then on top of all that, needing like really strong leadership skills to make sure everything runs smoothly.
And that's what we're here to do today, right? We're going to
Correct.
unpack all of that.
Exactly.
So, like, what do these landfill supervisors actually do all day?
Right.
What are some of the challenges that are unique to this job? And maybe this has piqued your interest.
Mhm.
How do you even become how do you become a landfill supervisor?
Yeah, it's a lot more than just, yelling at people for putting the wrong thing in the recycling bin, right?
Right, exactly. And that's kind of what I picture at first. But looking through these role catcher guides, they really emphasize that there's a huge leadership aspect to this.
Huge.
They're the ones coordinating the whole team, the staff. They're overseeing the day-to-day, and they are responsible for making sure the entire landfill complies with all the environmental regulations.
Yeah, and those regulations, they change all the time
Oh,
because
really?
you've got to constantly be learning and staying up to date on all the latest legislation.
Okay, so it's like a much bigger job than just like, I don't know, I guess I pictured like a guy in a hard hat walking around,
Yeah.
but it's a lot more than that. So like, what does that look like on a practical level?
Well, let's take something like landfill gas extraction systems.
Yeah.
So, as waste decomposes, it generates methane,
Right.
which is obviously a major greenhouse gas.
Yeah.
So these systems are designed to capture that methane and prevent it from just, escaping into the atmosphere. And landfill supervisors, they oversee those systems, make sure they're working properly.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you've got these intricate liner systems that are in place to prevent harmful stuff, liquids and things, from seeping into the groundwater.
Oh, wow. So you're telling me there are all these like systems in place to try to minimize the impact on the environment.
It's all about minimizing the environmental impact,
Yeah.
and the landfill supervisor, they're the ones who are responsible for making sure all of that works the way it's supposed to.
Hmm.
They monitor the systems, they troubleshoot any problems that pop up, and often they're coordinating with, engineers, environmental specialists, all sorts of people to keep everything running.
Okay, so there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than I think most people realize.
Absolutely.
It's a lot more, I don't know, it seems almost high tech in a way.
Right. And this really ties into a broader trend that we're seeing in waste management, right?
What's that?
As the global population grows, as environmental regulations, they're just getting stricter and stricter, the demand for people who has expertise in this field is just going up.
So that's probably a good thing for people who are in this line of work or thinking about going into it. Good job security. What's the job market look like overall? Like pros and cons?
Well, the good news is, according to RoleCatcher, job security is excellent. The pay is generally pretty good. And on top of all that, you're doing something, you're contributing to something that is absolutely essential.
Right. Everyone produces waste, right?
Right. It's a universal truth.
Right.
So we need people to manage all that waste responsibly. It's really critical for public health, for the environment, everything.
Okay, so that's a big. Plus the feeling that you're actually making a difference. But I mean, it can't all be rosy. There have to be some downsides, right? What are some of the like less glamorous aspects of this job?
Well, it's not the most, shall we say, fragrant line of work.
Of course, yeah.
You're going to encounter some unpleasant odors.
Okay, that's a given.
Yeah. It can also be physically demanding. You might be out in the elements. You might be dealing with, potentially hazardous materials.
Yeah.
And it's probably safe to assume that you're going to be working some long hours,
Yeah.
especially if, during peak times or if there's some kind of an emergency, something unexpected happens. You need to be ready to jump in.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. So you've really got to be someone who is adaptable, can think on their feet.
Absolutely. Strong problem-solving skills, those are essential. Imagine, a piece of heavy machinery breaks down, or
Yeah.
you've got a sudden influx of waste coming in, or even just, dealing with a member of the public who's upset about something.
Right.
A landfill supervisor needs to be able to handle it all.
Okay, so it's not just about knowing where to put a trash. What kind of education and training do you typically need for this? Could you like walk into this right out of high school?
That's I think, a common misconception. While having some experience working with heavy machinery, or maybe in a similar type of field, that can be helpful, but it's not always as straightforward as you might think. I mean, you need a certain set of skills. For example, RoleCatcher, they highlight something interesting.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
They say that customer service skills are actually 74% relevant to this role.
74%. Now, that is not something I would have expected. Why is customer service so important when we're talking about landfills?
Well, you think about it, right? A landfill supervisor interacts with all kinds of people throughout the day.
Yeah, I guess so.
Not just their own team, but you've got contractors coming and going, vendors, you've got inspectors, and yes, you even have members of the public who might come in with, questions or concerns.
Right, complaints.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So you have to be able to communicate clearly with people. You have to be able to manage those relationships.
It's all about communication and relationships.
So, okay, it's interesting because it's not just about the technical stuff. You have to have those people skills.
Absolutely.
Interesting. And what were some of the other skills that RoleCatcher highlighted?
Well, besides customer service, they also emphasize the importance of critical thinking and time management.
Okay. Well, let's unpack those a little bit further.
When you're in a fast-paced environment like a landfill, where things can change really quickly, that's where those skills, they become super important.
Yeah.
You need to be able to think on your feet, make good decisions, even when you're under pressure.
So you think about safety protocols, you've got budget constraints, there's regulatory compliance, and then, of course, you've got to manage the team. That's a lot to keep track of.
It is. And a landfill supervisor needs to be able to juggle all of those things. And that's where, that time management piece comes in. They're responsible for scheduling the staff, making sure projects stay on track, and ensuring the whole operation runs smoothly. So, being organized, being able to prioritize, delegate tasks effectively, and, not freaking out when things get hectic. Those are all really important qualities for a landfill supervisor.
So we're talking about a job that requires, technical expertise, obviously, but
Yeah.
then you need these leadership skills, you need to be diplomatic. It's a pretty interesting mix, I would imagine. There's never a dull moment, right?
You could say that. There's definitely a lot of variety, which, that can be a very rewarding aspect of the job for the right person.
So let's say someone is listening to this and they're thinking, hey, this actually sounds kind of interesting. I want to learn more. What does the path to becoming a landfill supervisor actually look like?
Well, RoleCatcher, they lay out a pretty clear progression.
Yeah.
Typically, you wouldn't just jump right into a supervisory role. You'd start with an entry-level position. So maybe you'd start as a landfill technician or an assistant.
Gotcha. Okay. So really learning the ropes from the ground up.
Exactly, yeah. You'd be getting hands-on experience with all the different aspects of how landfill operates.
Yeah.
You'd learn about monitoring the waste that comes in, how to operate the heavy machinery. You'd be involved in inspections. And you'd also be assisting with, making sure everything's in compliance with environmental regulations.
Okay.
RoleCatcher, they specifically mention the importance of understanding the legal side of things.
Interesting.
So, getting familiar with all the relevant regulations, the permits, all of that.
That makes sense. To have that strong foundation, not just the practical stuff, but also the legal side of it. Okay, so then what? So you've put in your time, you've learned the ropes. What's the next step?
So as you gain more experience, you prove yourself, you could move into a junior landfill supervisor position. And actually, RoleCatcher, they give some really helpful example profiles, kind of showing what that looks like.
What kind of responsibilities would a junior supervisor have?
At that level, you'd be taking on more responsibility for the day-to-day operations. So you'd be supervising staff, implementing safety protocols.
Okay.
You'd also be more involved in things like budget planning, data analysis, that type of thing.
So it sounds like you're still very hands-on, but now there's this added layer of leadership, decision-making that you're starting to take on.
Exactly. And then as you continue to excel, you could eventually work your way up to a senior landfill supervisor position.
Okay, so what sets a senior supervisor apart? Is it mostly just experience, or are there other, qualifications?
Experience is definitely a huge part of it, but at that senior level, you're not just managing the day-to-day anymore. You're basically setting the strategic direction for the entire landfill.
Wow. So you're thinking big picture. Okay. So what does that actually look like? What are you doing on a day-to-day basis?
Well, you'd be developing those long-term plans, finding ways to make operations even more efficient,
Okay.
and of course, making sure that everything stays in compliance with those ever-changing regulations.
Right.
You'd also be the one advocating for the landfill, maybe within the community.
Interesting.
And you might be involved in training, mentoring junior staff,
Okay.
managing budgets, even negotiating contracts with vendors.
Wow, it's really interesting how much responsibility and leadership is involved at every single stage. It's definitely not, it doesn't sound like an easy career path, but it sounds like it would be incredibly rewarding, especially as you progress, you start taking on more of those leadership roles.
And one thing I found really interesting is that RoleCatcher, they highlight how this career path, it's not just a dead end. You start as a landfill supervisor,
Yeah.
but the skills and knowledge you develop, they can actually open doors to other related careers in waste management.
Like what other kinds of paths could someone explore?
Well, for example, you could specialize in a particular area of waste management. So you could focus on hazardous waste disposal, or maybe you're really interested in recycling. You could get involved in developing recycling programs. You could also pursue roles in government agencies, environmental consulting firms, or even private companies that are really focused on sustainability.
So there's real potential for growth for specialization.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know because I think some people might worry about, hitting a ceiling in their career.
Right. But in this field, there are a lot of different directions you can go. And speaking of career advancement, this might be a good time to talk about how RoleCatcher is using AI to shake things up a bit when it comes to finding the right job.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. AI seems to be everywhere we look these days. It's definitely changing the job search process, right?
Absolutely. It's not just about, finding any job anymore. It's about finding the right job for you. And that's where RoleCatcher's AI tools come in.
So how does that work? What can AI actually do to help someone find a job, say, in a field like this one?
Well, imagine, you have this digital assistant that can analyze hundreds of job postings instantly, and then it identifies your key skills, and then it matches you with opportunities that really align with your experience, your career goals, all of that.
So no more endless scrolling through job boards.
Yes, exactly.
No more sending out like generic resumes.
Exactly. With RoleCatcher's AI, you can actually tailor your resume and cover letter to each specific job description, really highlighting those skills and experience that are most relevant. So you're more likely to catch the hiring manager's eye.
It's like having a secret weapon almost in this job market. It can be really tough out there, so having any kind of edge is helpful.
Right. And if that's not enough, RoleCatcher's AI can also do something else that's really cool.
What's that?
It can actually simulate job interviews.
Oh, wow.
So you can practice your answers, you get feedback, and you can really improve your interview skills.
So it's like having a personal coach, but it's all powered by AI.
Exactly.
I like it. I like it. The job search process can be so stressful, so anything that can kind of ease that anxiety, make it a little more manageable, I think that's really valuable.
Absolutely. And it's not just for, first-time job seekers. This can be really helpful for anyone who's, maybe been out of the job market for a while or who just, gets nervous during interviews. It's a great way to build your confidence.
And this is all through RoleCatcher.
All through RoleCatcher.
Wow. Okay, so they're using AI to help people find the right jobs. They've also got this other tool, their Career Compass, right?
Right.
What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the Career Compass, this is an amazing resource, especially if you're feeling kind of stuck in your career. You're not sure what your next move should be.
Right.
It's basically a career exploration tool.
Okay.
So it takes into account your skills, your interests, your experience, and it actually suggests potential career paths that you might not have even considered.
It's almost like it helps you to kind of connect the dots, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes you have these skills, you have these interests, but it's hard to see how they all fit together into a cohesive career path.
Exactly. It helps you see those connections,
Oh.
and it opens up a world of possibilities.
It takes all the guesswork out of it. So if you're feeling a little bit lost, Career Compass is there to be your guide.
Exactly, and help you find something that you're passionate about.
Okay, so I've got to say, we've been talking about a career that, honestly, I never really gave much thought to before.
Yeah.
But it's really fascinating the more we talk about it. It's so much more than just dealing with trash.
Yeah.
You've got the high-tech systems. There's this crucial role these folks play in protecting public health, the environment. Landfill supervisors, they're essential.
They are. And as we, as a society, continue to focus more and more on sustainability, waste reduction, this role is only going to become even more important in the years to come.
Okay, so before we wrap things up, I've got one final kind of thought-provoking question for our listeners. We've been talking about how technology, AI, is changing the job search process. It's changing the way that landfills operate.
Right.
But what about the human element? What about the people who work in this field? We're constantly hearing about how automation is going to replace jobs. But in a role like this where you need human judgment, you need problem-solving skills, you need those interpersonal skills, how do you see technology and automation impacting the future of this profession long term?
That's a great question. That's something I've definitely been thinking about as well. And while automation, it might change certain aspects of the job, I don't think it will ever fully replace the need for skilled, adaptable humans in this role.
That's reassuring to hear.
Because, think about it, even with the most advanced technology in the world, you'll always need someone who can think critically, right? You need someone who can troubleshoot problems on the fly. You need someone who can manage a team effectively and who can adapt to the unexpected.
Mhm.
And let's not forget about those people skills we were talking about earlier, building relationships, communicating clearly, resolving conflicts. Those are things that technology can't easily replicate.
Right. Those are human skills, and those are always going to be in demand no matter how much technology advances.
Exactly. And as waste management practices continue to evolve, as we face new environmental challenges, we're going to need people who can think creatively, who can come up with innovative solutions.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Automation might change some tasks, but it also creates opportunities for people to maybe step into more strategic roles, more problem-solving roles, leadership roles.
I think that's a great way to look at it. Instead of fearing automation, we should embrace it as an opportunity,
Hmm.
an opportunity to enhance our skills and to focus on what humans do best.
Mm.
Think critically, innovate, connect with each other.
It's an exciting time to be in the waste management field, it sounds like. Yeah, no, it really is. It's interesting to think about, we hear all this talk about how robots are going to take over the world. But when you really break it down, there are certain jobs, certain professions that just they require that human touch, you know? And
Yeah.
I think especially when we're talking about something as important as managing our environmental impact.
It really makes you appreciate, all the different layers of this job because we're talking about technical skills, right?
Right.
We're talking about environmental awareness,
Right.
leadership,
Yeah.
and even, a little bit of psychology thrown in there.
A little bit of everything. We
Right.
got to be able to read people, to understand what motivates them.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a fascinating field, and honestly, I'm a little embarrassed to say that I knew so little about it before we started this deep dive.
Me too.
Mhm.
It's one of those things, it's easy to forget about it because it's happening behind the scenes, right?
Right.
But it's absolutely crucial, for keeping our communities healthy, for promoting the environment.
Absolutely. And, for anyone listening who might be maybe feeling a little bit stuck in their career right now, or maybe they're just, they're open to exploring new possibilities, I highly recommend checking out RoleCatcher.
Yeah.
Their career guides are really informative. And then their AI tools, I mean, that could be a game changer for anyone who's trying to, land their dream job, even if it's a job that, they'd never even considered before.
And their career compass tool, that sounds really helpful for like if you're feeling lost, right? Like you don't even
Mm.
know where to start. This tool, it's like having personalized career recommendations right there at your fingertips.
It takes all the guesswork out of it.
It does.
So, okay. So to wrap things up, whether you are thinking about making a career change, or maybe you're just fascinated by the world of waste management, or maybe you're just, interested in the role that AI is playing in the job market, we hope that this deep dive has given you something to think about.
Definitely. It's always good to learn something new, expand your horizons a little bit.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe the next time you're taking out the trash or you're, sorting your recycling,
Yeah.
you'll have this newfound appreciation for all the work that goes into keeping those systems running smoothly.
I think those folks deserve a round of applause, honestly.
I couldn't agree more. Well, thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and remember, even the most unexpected places can hold surprising opportunities.